Signature Bank Studios.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Like Christian Toto, HollywoodandToto.com. I've been following our next guest for a while because sort of independent thinker and reviewer of movies. Mm-hmm. And since I'm a bit of a cinephile, I like to...
I love cinephiles.
Think about, my views and interpretations of things against other people who are actually, critically thinking and not just flacking for some film or some actor for some company for some reason. So it's interesting. She wrote this recent piece at her Substack about why she's voting for Trump, which we'll get into. But she sort of ended with a provocative line about Hollywood, at least it's provocative to me, because I'm not sure it's true. So I want to get her take on it. Sasha Stone writes, Hollywood is collapsing. No one cares about the movies anymore. Hardly anyone watches them. Why? Because they can't tell the truth anymore, not even to themselves. But as long as they have a fresh supply of people to accuse and purge, they can pretend they're still the good guys. I agree with the last part, but not about the collapsing part. And I mean, there's so much dreck that comes out of Hollywood, and so much that's derivative, like all these superhero movies, and redundant. But I mean, you still see big box office numbers. And you know how I do it too is I sort of zero in on actors I really like. Like I'll watch anything with Mads Mikkelsen in it. I'll watch anything with Viggo Mortensen in it. So I'm going to watch his latest Western. That's next on my hit list. The Dead Don't Hurt. Maybe Sasha's seen that.
What about Gene Hackman? I'd watch anything that but he retired.
Yeah, but he's 90 plus, so yeah, he's out. But yeah, if you want to do like a Gene Hackman retrospective on a weekend, sure, I can be down with that. But that's the way I sort of think about it. Directors, actors, you focus on their work who are sort of consistent performers. But Hollywood is collapsing. Sasha Stone is a writer, publisher, founder, and editor of the film and awards discussion website, Awards Daily. And again, she also writes at her Substack, which I was just referencing, sashastone.substack.com. Sasha, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hi, thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. So Hollywood is collapsing. What do you mean by that exactly?
First of all, Gene Hackman, same. Like, I'll see him. He was my favorite actor, one of my favorite actors. Love him. Viggo Mortensen, also great. I haven't seen that movie yet, but I want to see it. So as you know, I've been working in the business. I've been covering them for 25 years, the Oscars. I started in 1999 when it was the first movie that won Best Picture the year I started was Gladiator, if you can imagine. And so back then, Hollywood was, they listened to the free market, right? What mattered to them was how many people came to see their movies. Mm-hmm. The box office mattered, and the box office mattered to the Oscars, too. What measured a film's success was how well it did at the box office, in addition to it also being a good movie, well-written, well-acted. But now the public doesn't matter at all, to the Oscars, for instance, at all. Last year's winner was the exception to the rule, and I thought maybe things would change. After Oppenheimer won last year, it was the first sort of major blockbuster that was also critically acclaimed that swept the Oscars, and we hadn't seen that in a really long time. But it's not just about the Oscars, because the Oscars don't really have much to do with Hollywood. But if you notice this past year, a movie with Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt basically bombed. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny bombed.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't bomb, it just underperformed, they keep saying. And no one will admit it, but we're watching these movies that open, and what you're seeing is not just a lack of interest among the public for the movies themselves, but for the movie stars. Like, they can't open movies anymore. It's shocking. And again, because Hollywood is so afraid to talk about anything, because look at what happened to me. Like, you get in a lot of trouble if you speak out of turn. And so they don't say anything, so they can't really solve a problem if they can't name the problem. But I see it everywhere, and there are layoffs at companies like Paramount. Disney basically bought up Fox and Fox Studios and Marvel and Star Wars, and then the Disney brand is starting to struggle. What they built so long ago is changing, and it's changing fast. And it's not just a matter of streamers competing with them. It's not just a matter of derivative content, although that's a lot of it. It's the Hollywood brand. In my opinion, they have built something that's not sustainable.
So how did you get the MAGA darling label?
That was the writer. She decided to call me that. Mm-hmm. Nice person that she is.
Oh, for the Hollywood Reporter, I'm sure. Yeah, right. Even-handed treatment, I have no doubt.
Yeah, no, they need clickbait, right? That's the other problem, is that the trades have also begun to collapse. And when I say collapse, I don't mean their business is going to end. I mean, what they once were, they no longer are.
You're talking about like quality and quality of product.
Yeah, I'm saying, it's not going to be that the Hollywood Reporter goes out of business anytime soon, although who knows, right? But they have the same problem that Hollywood does. They're sort of paralyzed by fear. So they don't really have a lot that they can write about. They can't write about truthful things, so they have to go and they find anything relating to Trump is clickbait for them. Get me some story on Trump, and this is a juicy story for them.
Well, right. When we talked I mentioned Christian Toto, and I don't know if you know him, but
yeah, I know him. He's a good guy.
Yeah, he is a good guy, and one of the he's honest about who he is and what he thinks, but he's also a professional when it comes to being a critic of entertainment, Hollywood and movies and TV. And he talks about like how because I asked him, is it difficult to get interviews with with different stars and so on and so forth. And he said, like the people, for the most part, I'm treated sort of even-handedly. But there are agents and stars that won't talk to me because they feel like somehow it's too dangerous to their brand to have a conversation with Christian Toto, who couldn't be a more reasonable guy, but just because he is branded as center right. And he mentioned who's that goof that's in the Jack Reacher streaming series? That guy, what's his name? Why am I blanking on his name? You know who I'm talking about?
This I don't even know that show.
Okay, well, anyway, he's sort of one of the new action guys because of the success of Jack Reacher online, and he wouldn't do this interview with Christian Toto. I was just wondering, sort of what is it like in your environment when you're offering your reviews on various artistic offerings? Do you get interaction now, or do you get sort of dismissed and ignored because of your politics?
Well, now that story has come out in the Hollywood Reporter, I'm sure they will shun me. I'll be persona non grata in Hollywood now. It wasn't like that before because I wasn't going public with. The only reason she noticed it is because I was tweeting openly on my professional Twitter account, quote unquote. But the reason I was doing that was because I knew what I'd been writing on my private, but my Substack, which is more my personal site. And I knew sooner or later someone was going to do that story, right? So I've been talking about Trump for 4 years now. I wasn't a Trump supporter or Trump voter up until fairly recently, but before that I was sympathetic to Trump and MAGA because of my experience that happened to me in 2020, the way things started to shift and change for me. So I knew sooner or later someone was going to write that story, right? They were going to say, oh, she's a Trump supporter, and it was going to be a much bigger deal. And then if I just came clean and lived a more truthful life, this is who I am, this is what I think, damn the torpedoes, But it was still, I have to say, I'm putting on a brave face, but it was the most terrifying thing I've ever lived through. I've never felt fear before like this from my own side, right? My own former side. I've never felt fear before, like that people are watching me, that they're talking about me, that they're whispering about me, that they're trying to destroy my business, that the advertisers are going to pull ads, that they're not going to invite me to screenings, and if I go to film festivals, people won't even talk to me. Like that feeling is really bad and really scary. And And it makes you not want to say and be honest. It makes you want to always be quiet and always go along because nobody wants to feel like that.
Did that sort of stuff actually happen to you?
It's happening now. Yeah, right
happening
now because of that story. Yeah.
Well, Alan Ritchson was, by the way, the actor I'm talking about. You know, and it's just so funny. Rough and tumble action star, manly man, and
who cares?
And he's a peahat, right? You know, I mean, it's just it's so typical of that sort of the male impersonator set, which is obviously all over Hollywood.
Toto is about as fair-minded of a person as you can find. Like, he doesn't take the radical right view at all.
Right.
He's a good guy. He's an honest journalist. He does come from the perspective of the right, but and they do invite him to screenings, so they don't treat him totally like a pariah, like they would somebody like Ben Shapiro, you know.
Well, it's also too. It's not just that, you know, MAGA darling and getting that branding, but also per this piece that you wrote at your Substack, some of the issues that moved you in the direction of MAGA. I mean, you stepped on the third rail. Now you're jumping up and down on it.
I stepped on the third. I used to call it I called it the Trump line. Like, you know, over the years I've written about it. And as long as you don't cross the Trump line, you can somehow semi-survive. But it's not entirely true because a good friend of mine, he runs a site. He hates Trump. All he does all day long is post about how much he hates Trump, and yet they destroyed his business too. All the advertisers fled. He got kicked out of the Critics' Choice. He got kicked out of Gold Derby, our prediction site. And he has to work now as a limo driver, you know, and he's
What did he do?
What did he do?
not a young.
Pardon?
He posted, you're not going to believe this.
Oh, try us.
But, okay, when, it's so hard, when there was that shooting in the spa, remember the shooting, the mass shooting in the spa, with Asians
Asian
were
spa?
shot
Yeah,
by
the
this
massage
crazy
parlor.
guy.
Yeah.
And at first the story was it was race-driven, of course. It was a hate crime. But, of course, it would unfold that it wasn't. It was a guy who was obsessed with these women and who couldn't break his addiction is what that shooting was about. But that same year, the film Nomadland was about to win Best Picture, and it was written and directed by Chloe Zhao, who's from China, who's an Asian woman. And somebody had sent him a message that said, oh, well, that movie's definitely going to win now. And he posted it on his website. That's all he did, was post something someone else had said about Chloe Zhao's movie winning because of the Asian. But it was deemed so offensive that it destroyed his business overnight and his entire career. But he's still writing, he's still doing his thing, he's been kicked out. So I look at that and I think, you can't tell me it's about Trump, right? You can't, because look at what's happening over here. It has nothing to do with Trump.
No, Trump is.
It's not.
Yeah, Trump is just a representation. You know, he's you know, an expression of a larger totalitarian attitude.
Exactly. That's right. Thank you. And so coming out of that is hard, right?
Right, and I just to close the loop on you stepping on the third rail and jumping up and down on it, not just saying I'm going to vote for Trump or whatever, but you said I would vote for any Republican because only they will put a stop to the madness of gender affirming care. Now you've really done it.
Yeah, right. I know, right? Doubly offensive.
But I mean, and I assume you're getting the same reaction, the same treatment, you know, on some level that J.K. Rowling has received across the pond.
Yeah, except for I'm nowhere near as. I mean, she's gotten it way worse than me, and she's been more outspoken than I have been. I've only been outspoken recently, which is why the story was written about me. I mostly kept that stuff off of my Twitter, but at some point I felt like I kind of needed to join the fight because it does matter to me. What I know is, one thing I know from writing about the Oscars for 25 years is that I can kind of see the future, I can predict the future. I've learned human nature well enough to know how things are going to go. And I can tell you that with this thing, once the lawsuits start coming out and the memoirs are being written and the documentaries are being made, the question's going to be asked, where were you? Yeah. Why didn't you protect us? Yeah. Why didn't anybody stand up for this? And what are you going to say? Oh, I was afraid I'd lose my advertisers.
Right.
Is that the answer?
Right. Well, I mean, I wonder too. It's always interesting when you're under attack. Because you sort of find out who your friends are, as the saying goes, and sometimes there are people who surprise you in both directions, both standing with you and running from you. And I wonder
Yes.
if that's happening to you now.
Yes. One really big surprise was a really good friend of mine for many years. Never in a million years did I think this person would abandon me in our friendship, not just because of this, but because of politics in general. So that was a surprise. But the amount of support I've gotten is even more surprising. People will write to me and say, we're on the different sides politically, but I just want you to know that I support you. And I a lot of people have written me. Reporters from, the New York Times wrote me, and I've even got people who want to write for my site now because, 3 of my writers left. And so there's a positive side to it, to counteract the terror that you feel when you're the subject of one of these things.
Well, you know what? I was just thinking about this the other day, like why people root for the underdog. And certainly you're clearly an underdog here in Hollywood. And I think a lot of people want to believe that some of these rigged systems aren't rigged. You want someone to escape so that you have hope of somehow escaping. You want someone to do what you're doing so that you can find the stamina to stand and be authentic too. And so, I mean, it's an incredible service you're doing given the environment in which you're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like it's touch and go at the moment. But what strikes me as odd is that these are the people who stood against the blacklist. They're the people who said
of course.
The government they just voted Oppenheimer Best Picture, and Oppenheimer's about a guy who was destroyed by authoritarian government that thought he was a communist and wouldn't let it go. And so it's just weird to me to see them give that movie Best Picture at the same time they're behaving that way.
Yeah, the irony is completely lost on them, unfortunately. Sasha Stone, writer, publisher, founder, and editor of the Film and Awards discussion website, Awards Daily, and you can get her writings at sashastone.substack.com. Sasha, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, good luck with everything, and we will definitely have you back. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
From breaking news and weather across the country to insight from the brightest minds in conservative opinion, it's